to Anne Marie and Matt and Michigan State also for the opportunity to speak. As we're kind of all building on each other, you'll kind of see that as we go through. I'm going to talk more data, which I will tell you right now, not my forte. I was an anthropology major. But I will say, just to kind of echo one of the things that both Stephanie and Chris said, I also benefited from study abroad program at Michigan State. Huge opportunity for us, as well as for those international students that come here. So we're going to kind of take a look at the economic impact of immigrants and refugees in Michigan. As was mentioned at the beginning, I work at the Michigan Office for New Americans, and Bing's going to talk a little bit more about the history of our office. But the one thing I will say is that our office was developed or created by Governor Snyder with an economic development focus or lens. So even though immigration has a very social justice-oriented view on many occasions, our office was created with that economic development focus, and that's kind of how we view our work. So starting with international students, and this is actually, most of this information is about international students here in Michigan. So we have approximately 32,000 international students in Michigan at all of our various universities. Their economic contribution is $1 billion a year. $1 billion. It supports over 13,000 jobs, those international students do. And what we know about international students is that for every foreign-born graduate with an advanced degree, they create 2.6 jobs for U.S. workers. So going back to some of what we've talked about with immigrants, quote-unquote, taking U.S. jobs, data and research actually shows that they create jobs versus taking jobs. And then nationally, foreign student enrollment in universities across the country, this is a national status, obviously, it's increased 72% from 1999 to 2013, with the largest percentage being from Asia. However, to echo what Stephanie said earlier, and Chris as well, about international students and admission, there was a recent study done in the last, I believe in the last month, that 40% of universities across the country are showing a decline in enrollment from international students for the exact reasons that Chris mentioned. What does Michigan look like? Michigan has over 640,000 foreign-born. That doesn't mean they're all, they might have been citizens by now, some of them might have arrived yesterday. We have approximately 640,000 foreign-born, which is approximately 6% of our total population. Over 30,000 immigrants in Michigan are self-employed, and they generate $600 million in business income. That was 2014, that was the most recent data that we had that had been analyzed. And they employ over 150,000 individuals. Additionally, 33% of our Fortune 500 companies in Michigan are immigrant-founded or founded by the children of immigrants. 1/3 of our Fortune 500 companies. So a Meyer, a Masco, a Ford Motor Company, these companies would not be here today had it not been for those immigrants or their children. And to kind of echo the graph that Stephanie showed, but bring it down to Michigan specifically, over 65% of Michigan foreign-born are working age compared to 52% of our Michigan natives. What is immigration's role in Michigan? Well, there was a Georgetown University study done that showed that by 2018, you know where we are today, right? 2017. By 2018, we need to fill over 250,000 STEM jobs. Yeah, 250,000. But what a lot of the research and data shows us is that, at least right now, international students are going into STEM fields at higher rates than U.S. born. Now, I know there are a lot of different programs out there, especially geared toward elementary and middle school age children. I know my son's going to be in high school next year, and they've got a whole STEM program for high school students. I mean, there's definitely that push to kind of really drive more individuals into the STEM field, but the reality today is that the majority of individuals who are in STEM fields are foreign-born. In end of December of 2013, there was an engineering job fair held in Metro Detroit. There were 3,000 open positions with 276 applicants that showed up for that job fair. It's not just our quote-unquote high-skilled, and the reason why I say it that way is one of the things that Bing and I often talk about is when we look at jobs, we believe that every job has its own skills necessary to perform that job. So we don't necessarily believe there are high-skilled and low-skilled jobs. Again, every job has its own set of special criteria or duties that go along with it. There are an estimated 49,000 seasonal agricultural workers needed to sustain our over $100 billion industry within the state of Michigan. And the reality is, at least the research that we've seen is, almost half of our workers are usually migrant workers. So that's obviously, they contribute a lot. And we talk about the industry, we're not just talking about those that harvest. The agricultural industry then goes all the way up the chain, so to speak, to food processing, to restaurants, to grocery stores, etc. We have a looming healthcare profession shortage. We are allegedly supposed to be short about 18,000 nurses by 2020. More than a quarter of our physicians, and this is in Michigan, are over 60. However, more than half of our medical school graduates are leaving Michigan. Again, we are an aging population, as Stephanie's graph showed earlier. And right now, 1 out of every 3 doctors in Michigan is a foreign medical grad. More about the economic impact of immigrants. Immigrants right now are more than twice as likely as US born to start a business. And once they start those businesses, obviously as we showed before, they're also then employing, right, a lot of the US born. Approximately 28% of our over 56,000 farms are immigrant owned. And 58% of our economic activity is accounted for by crops harvested by migrant labor. Again, just looking how that economic impact can impact our state. Talking more about those individuals that might get an H-1B visa that Chris had mentioned, those international students who graduate, and one of their pathways is to get an H-1B. The New American Economy out of New York, which is Michael Bloomberg's kind of immigration research arm, did a study about 2 years ago on the H-1B process, and they focused on specific metro areas, including Detroit. And what they were looking at was, as Chris mentioned, there is a cap on the number of new H-1B visas allowed per fiscal year, and that cap has been met every year, so it is a lottery system. So what this report looked at was, had there not been a lottery system and all of the applications in Metro Detroit that were filed, had they all been accepted for processing, what would that have looked like? And what that would have looked like, at least from 2007 and 2008, from looking at those visa petitions filed during that period of time, if all of those petitions had been received and approved, it would have resulted in 15,000 new jobs for US-born tech workers in the computer-related field specifically, and an aggregate of $135 million in salary, increased salary for those US-born. So they're also kind of extrapolating that $135 million was lost, so to speak, right? So those workers did not earn those wages or, earn that income as a result of those H-1B petitions not being accepted for processing. When we look at some of the ethnic composition of Michigan, we kind of just break it down into some of our 3 biggest. So for the Hispanic Latino community in Michigan, they have a total income of about $2.2 billion, and they paid over $167 million in state and local taxes. For our Asian Pacific American community, they have a total income earned of about $7.6 billion and paid over almost $575 million in state and local taxes. And we've got our Middle Eastern and North African communities who collectively earn $2.8 billion and pay over $213 million in state and local taxes. So what does all of this tell us? It tells us that immigrants have an important role on the positive economic impact in Michigan. And at the Michigan Office for New Americans, we, again, are looking at that from an economic development perspective, and we work with a number of these community groups to try and make sure that communities are not only integrated in Michigan and feel welcome in Michigan, but also can try and thrive within Michigan. And a couple ways that we have done that is we host what we call our ethnic cabinet, which is about 50 to 60 different ethnic chambers, ethnic business organizations, and our 3 state ethnic commissions. We meet on a quarterly basis with that group, and it's an exchange of information between the state and those ethnic communities, an ongoing relationship building, information sharing, again, about 4 times a year. We also convene what we call our Global Michigan Group, which is a group that is, again, statewide, but that's comprised of universities, economic development groups, nonprofits, our 3 state ethnic commissions, and some of our larger ethnic chambers, as well as a number of our state agencies. That group is looking at creating a welcoming environment within Michigan, sharing best practices for immigrant integration, and really retaining international and entrepreneurial talent, and as well as attracting that talent to our state. And then finally, one of the other ways we've worked with integration is we held a refugee strategy work group over about a 6-month period of time with our refugee resettlement agencies, as well as just about every state agency you can think of, including MDOT and the Michigan State Police, looking at refugee resettlement in our state. Where might there be gaps in services, and if those were regional or statewide? If we increase the number of refugees coming to Michigan, would that create gaps in services? If so, regional, statewide, et cetera. And kind of create a list of challenges, issues, ideas to try and move forward. And so at this point, that's what we've been doing, is working with our resettlement agencies and our state agencies on how we can move some of those issues forward. So I have briefly put up a few different resources. I'll leave this slide up for the moment. I'm happy to email that around to everyone, or Anne Marie may be able to send them out to the group. But these, again, are just a few of many resources that we've used to collect data. One that I will point out specifically is the second bullet point, which is Immigrant Economic Data in Michigan by U.S. Congressional District. That was put together by the New American Economy, again, out of New York. Maptheimpact.org, really great. They have overall state data, but you can also break it down by U.S. Congressional District. And now Bing is going to talk about the history of Mona.